If you're just holding XRP and waiting for the price, you're missing the real game, because XRP could soon deliver serious yield. But not all APYs are equal. Some are safe, some are scams. Let's break it down. What Hugo Philion, co-creator of Flare, and Jesus Rodriguez, CTO of Sentora, the team that built Firelight, just revealed. Baseline versus upside yield. First, Jesus Rodriguez sets the floor. He says XRP staking could realistically return about 4 to 7% APR.
On the protocol itself. One of the, in terms of the yields, right, obviously it changes with the market, but given the demand and the current momentum with the stable coins, or all our tests, and also a lot of the things that Flare is launching on DeFi, show that we can be on the 4 to 6, 7% on yield on XRP, which for an asset that never seen a yield, that the cost of capital is fundamentally zero, is extremely attractive.
All right, that was Jesus Rodriguez from on the Wolf of All Streets YouTube channel. Go check it out. That's your conservative baseline. Nothing crazy, nothing scammy, just math from current DeFi mechanics. Stay open, the upside is still coming. But then Hugo Philion raises the ceiling. He explains how stablecoin demand and FXRP strategies could push those yields far higher. And this is on Gen X live stream on Flare Networks. Go follow her on X and YouTube.
Thank you, Santiago. Hugo, do you have anything to add to that?
Absolutely. So Santiago mentioned that the HODL will have a sizable treasury. And, you know, I mentioned that one of the ways to get yield on that treasury would be to stake it in Firelight, which is a great way to do it. But there's another way to get very simple yield as well, using XRP. So you would convert it to FXRP on Flare, and you would deposit it in a collateralized debt stablecoin protocol, which is being built. So it allows you to deposit, let's say, $2 of XRP to get, let's say, $1.2, $1.5 of stablecoin out. Okay. And this then, you then have stablecoin, which is collateralized entirely by XRP. And then you can lend out that stablecoin, you know, against other assets. It obviously has risk of liquidation and fluctuations of prices, but XRP is extremely liquid. And so therefore, you know, you should be able to get a reasonable amount of leverage on it. And that should allow you to get, you know, some yield on an asset that currently does not have yield. And, you know, to give you some examples, stablecoin yields are currently hovering between 8 and 20%, depending on the protocol.
Wow.
So, you know, being able to lend out stablecoins to get a reasonable yield, to me seems like a good way to relatively safely, because you can over collateralize quite heavily, effectively lend out your XRP as a stablecoin. So I think that's another way that you could derive, of course, yield from XRP. And that's without getting into perps protocols and liquidity providing and all that kind of stuff, because that's very, like, that then takes on a level of risk that probably is beyond the level of risk a treasury would want to take.
So now we're talking 7 to 20% APR. And that's not just hype, that's yield generated by swaps, liquidity, and actual demand on the network. What happens when you restake for extra yield? Hugo also breaks down another level, restaking. Let's play the clip right now.
BT0 on Flare. So we're building a whole sort of wide ecosystem to which we are adding these non-yielding tokens like XRP.
Okay, so then the next natural question, obviously you mentioned stablecoins. I guess I would imagine be stablecoin agnostic. You'll use a number of them, but we do know that there's popular stablecoins now coming on XRP. But what kind of trades do you think that people will be using to earn yields using your products and the stable coins? And, how do you ensure that that's all efficient?
What kind of trades do I think people will be doing? I think, obviously, I think one of the biggest ones will be staking into Firelight. And then, so staking into Firelight, which effectively is, going to have an element of restaking and an element of what we're calling economic security services. I think that's the correct word. So ESS. And then, obviously, once you've created something, a staked version of XRP, you can then kind of do more with that. So, that can probably be used for collateral downstream, so you can increase your yield. And then separately, we do have the full DeFi ecosystem. So, I think people will be collateralizing their wrapped XRP, their FXRP, into things like a stablecoin through a CDP, then deploying, then lending that out, looping that strategy would be my guess. So I think it's Jesus is really the expert here, as he's done that for a large number of entities. So
think of it like this. You earn yield for securing the network, then you restake that same value into DeFi, so you're getting paid twice, security and liquidity. Bigger picture, defining success, Hugo and Jesus. Both Hugo and Jesus are clear. It's not just about chasing numbers, it's about whether institutions adopt Flare.
Just from my perspective, you've seen a lot of bridges launch. But you actually have to have a will and an appetite to build an ecosystem around something that has not yet, got a developed ecosystem. So bridging XRP to Ethereum, absolutely fine. Flare is probably the only entity really that has built out a fully fledged DeFi ecosystem around these, zero yield tokens. And again, focusing heavily on XRP. And we spent a long time, a lot of money, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to build out that ecosystem, which is now, operating really nicely. And there's already, substantial TVL even before we've added these, XRP.
Hugo, how will you gauge your success once you launch?
Two things. One, obviously TVL. The whole thing is, we want to attract XRP to Flare. We want it to be a core component of our DeFi ecosystem. And then, the usage of just getting the token onto the network really does nothing for us. The usage of that token in protocols like Firelight, in DEXs, lending protocols, how much of it used, how much of it is real versus incentivized. The more real yield you have, the more successful you have been.
Oh, if we get really ambitious about this, I think a good subjective measure of success will be when the narrative around XRP changes from this sentiment-driven thing that it is today to a yield-friendly asset. Like in Ethereum, everybody associates ETH with yield. You want to get to that point. You want people to know that the XRP could have a yield associated with it. It's so seamless that every XRP holder should think about it that way.
That is a long-term vision. If big money trusts Flare, the yields we're talking about become sustainable. And finally, Jesus teased something huge for insurance pools.
Yeah, look, when you think, so one of the differences of Firelight and other restaking, and obviously we work with all those restaking platforms and their partners, and we took a lot of inspiration for what they have built. But one of the things that we want to do different, and hopefully it's very clear on the message when the project launches, is that we want to go from launch to real yield in a very short period of time. That is equivalent of saying we don't want to be playing point games for a long time, right? It's just, now the question is, you asked before, what are the sources of yield? So there are two fundamental categories. One is DeFi strategies. Flare has a good ecosystem, very solid ecosystem for XRP type of strategies. We have been fortunate to partner with Ripple on the launch of the Ripple stablecoin since the beginning. So a lot of those initial trades on Curve and Aave and Euler were designed by our research team, and our institutional client base was able to support it. So PayPal is doing a lot with PyUSD. There are a lot of stable coins that are coming to market very strongly with a lot of incentive programs that you can use to pay yield on those and translate into borrow USDC or USDT and deploy into those, and you get a solid yield on XRP. The other type of product, so that is one demographic, right? The one type of yield product that is gonna, Firelight is gonna benefit from it. The other one is, think if you have a lot of capital that doesn't have, that is a stake, and it doesn't have a yield, what can you do with that? And we have been working on a number of initiatives that we think are primitive, that are missing in DeFi, that could be unlocked with that. Not sure how deep we want to go into this, but the first product that we're going to announce with this is a product for DeFi insurance that we have been partnering with some of the top protocols in the market. Within insurance, we literally call it the missing primitive. Is the one thing that this financial market doesn't have compared to traditional finance, and it's a massive unlock for institutions. So imagine if you could have your XRP stake and insure like the top 5 or 6 DeFi protocols. So the risk of, and get paid a yield for that. So the risk of you losing your XRP is the risk of one of those protocols like Firelight or Uniswap or something being hacked, which is the same risk as putting XRP in that protocol, which if there was yields in Aave for XRP, people would deploy it like no questions asked. So we think that is an interesting thing. There are ideas about bridging liquidities for RWAs. A lot of the RWAs in the market they trade 24/7, but they provide liquidity once a month. So if you can you use this pool of capital to bridge? So there is a lot of interesting solutions that you can build once you have a lot of assets that have zero cost of capital and have a way to, if something bad happens, I can slash in. The trick is it has to be very low risk, almost as close to the staking risk as you can get.
That all makes perfect sense. So
Here's where it gets wild. By staking XRP into DeFi insurance pools, you don't just earn yield, you also collect premiums on top. But I'm not covering that today. That's in my next video, a full breakdown of how Firelight and these insurance pools could change everything. This always worries me about DeFi. If something happens, it gets hacked, then you lose it. So I don't want to lose my crypto, but we'll see how this turns out. This sets up baseline 47% upside, 7 to 20% restaking adds more. Watch the insurance deep dive next. It's dropping right after this video in a couple of days. Hold smart, do your own research, and let's get those gains, crypto fam. Have a fabulous day.